My name is Fiona McCarthy. I'm a freelance journalist, author in interiors and design and food and travel and all the other things. And I've known Bernie for quite a long time, so it's very lovely to be here to do this. Wiggy Hindmarch is Wiggy Kit, founder and designer, creative director, driving force.
I'll do anything.
Okay, there you go. Makes the tea, sweeps the floors.
Definitely. I was peppering last week.
And Skye McAlpine, very best-selling cookbook author, and you have your own tableware collection called Tavola. Tavola. Sorry, I always get that wrong. The Australians would go Tavola, and she says Tavola in this gorgeous way. And you write columns and all sorts of different things, fingers in pies, literally. So we thought that this conversation, given we have interiors, fashion and food per se, although they all link together anyway, we thought we would talk about really what drives their businesses and their ethos. And so it's the sort of art of craftsmanship, creativity, and sort of conscious ethos. And given that it was International Women's Day yesterday, hooray, happy Women's Day to everyone. As Cerys Matthews said yesterday on BBC Six, every day should be International Women's Day. But anyway, we thought we would kick off and think about also as women in business, how that has been and how each one has formed their businesses. So as we are in the gorgeous De La Cuona showroom, Bernie, why don't you just give us a very little recap, because everyone will know you anyway, but how you started and really where you are now.
Well, I started a lifetime ago. So I started over 30 years ago, and it's been a labour of love. I've seen all the ups and all the downs, so nothing's new to me. Oh, that's how it feels at the moment. But yes, it was over 30 years ago, and the company started off just with me and with an idea, and now it's grown and grown and grown, and we're in America, all over America, and we're in Europe, and soon to be in the Middle East. And
it grew from actually just a very tiny seed, which is that you had been in South Africa, you were here, you were traveling, you were doing things, and you went to Belgium and you saw some vintage linen that you really struck a chord with you.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about fabric. I'd studied architectural design, and I lived in Belgium for a year, having left South Africa, which I loved. And I saw this linen, and I thought, I'm fascinated by this fabric, by the textures and the color that it takes. And, you know, vintage linen is so fabulous because the way the color is washed out, it looks just really beautiful. So when I came to the UK, and suddenly here I was, and I had to start doing something, I remembered the linen. And the first start was when I went to India on a buying trip for somebody else. And I went right into the center part of India called the Bihar, and I learned how to weave because I didn't know a warp from a weft. And I learned with these hand weavers how actually to weave. And then I discovered at that stage they didn't have linen in India, linen yarn. So I came back to the UK, sent them the yarn, and that's how it started. And very, very, very quickly, I realized that I couldn't control the quality if I was working out of India. So I moved everything to Europe. I had fortuitous meetings with a few designers in London who wanted to buy the products. And that's really the beginning of where we are.
From stonewashing to all sorts of treatments that you now do, which we'll come back to. Wiggy, you started really with a spring-summer collection, didn't you?
That's how
Tell us how it was inspired.
Well, when I first started, it was really, I always knew I was going to start my own business, but and I always knew it was going to be in fashion. For me, it was about problem solving a situation that actually happened in my life. My husband said, please, would you just sort out the closets? You know, it's out of control. I love shopping. And so I started going through everything. And when I got to my summer clothes, I realized, which I kept in the spare bedroom, I realized that basically I had two separate summer wardrobes. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I've got sort of summer clothes that I can wear in London, but not very many. There wasn't actually very many things that I could choose from. And then I had the sort of clothes that you take out, we go somewhere really hot, you're nice and tanned, and you sort of, and I thought, this is so ridiculous because we don't have 2 winter wardrobes. Why do I have 2 summer wardrobes? And neither could go in both directions. So I thought, well, this is really silly. Why can't someone produce something that you could wear in London quite happily, but you could also take when you're going somewhere really beautiful and hot, and that will be appropriate for both situations. So that's how it sort of came about. I thought, this can't be rocket science. And the idea of also being able to have a wardrobe that really does take you from first thing in the morning through to last thing at night. You could throw over a bikini like this. I could throw over a bikini, and I could also put on a pair of gold heels and wear this out for dinner. So it was having versatility, making absolutely sure that you get your money's worth out of the pieces that you're wearing. You wear them a lot. They will last you a very long time, and that it was appropriate for every situation. So I could take this on the school run, I could take this to the beach, and I could wear this for dinner at someone's house later on.
Yeah. Skye.
Me, I'm just a very greedy person. And I love food. And I grew up in Italy, so I think it's impossible to grow up in Italy and not love food and not kind of make food a very central theme and central part of your life. But when I was doing my studies and I was meant to kind of be in the library studying things, I was actually sort of endlessly kind of planning dinner parties and reading cookbooks and basically trying to find ways of bringing people together at home, which is sort of how I slowly taught myself, I guess, to cook. I had lots and lots of cookbooks. I have many cookbooks. I love cookbooks. And anyway, that kind of grew. And then I started writing, I guess, about food. And then chatting with friends, I realized that I kind of wasn't alone in this kind of feeling that I wanted to bring people together, but not necessarily having the confidence or the skills or the tools to do it. So that kind of became a central theme for my writing. And then I guess the tableware grew from there because, I mean, I love cooking, but I'm not a chef. And so I do think sometimes, you know, you don't have time or you don't feel like cooking, and it's more a matter of just kind of throwing together a few ingredients or assembling a few things. And I think if to have the right tableware and the right pieces for the table makes a big difference towards kind of elevating that takeaway or that kind of ready-made salad or whatever it is that you've just bought. If you put it on a nice plate, it creates that sort of atmosphere of hominess and coziness and ultimately hopefully a welcoming space.
Yeah, so you sort of feel food is an integral part of conviviality in a much bigger picture.
100%.
And I think probably, Bernie, what you do with your very beautiful fabrics is they form the sort of the backdrop and the sort of cocooning of someone's life. And Wiggy, you like doing clothes that actually people almost forget they're wearing.
Yeah.
So then they become themselves rather than worrying about what their dress is doing.
Self-consciousness, I think, is a killer sort of thing to personal style. If you look uncomfortable in what you're wearing, if you are feeling very sort of overly done, I think being overly done is much worse than being underdone. And I think just approaching it in a kind of easy way so that you can just forget about what you're wearing, feel confident, and then actually enjoy the dinners that you're having, you know, live in your house, not to be consumed with, it's not fitting quite right.
Being in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that that's quite interesting for all three of you in terms of also your businesses, because really you've struck your own chord. You don't care about trends. You've really just pursued things. I mean, I know, Bernie, you look to the fashion world actually for colours and interesting things. But ultimately, it's your pursuit of what you believe in and having that confidence. And I think, Skye, you were saying to me the other day that having confidence in yourself is probably the best thing you could always have. Bernie, for you, because you had seen this sort of beautiful finish and you'd seen also, I think, the making silk in India and how they bashed it with the rocks and that softened it. But it reminded you actually of where you come from. And being South African is a really big part, actually, really, of your sort of creative...
It is. I think it's a very big part of the texture and the colour.
Yeah.
You know, when I came here and I didn't know anything about the industry in the UK, I didn't know much about what interior designers were doing. I just really did what I liked and what I knew. And I love the outdoors. I love the African bush, and I love the colors and the textures. And so I just followed what I really love and created things I hope like hell other people would love. But it's all about not worrying about fashion and not creating these laboratory colors, as I call them, just doing what we really believe is beautiful.
So you have a new collection that you're launching this week. Have we got, is it around us?
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. This one's new.
So woven earth. So I guess it does definitely come down to nature, which is a huge inspiration for you. Tell us about how you decided, because you've got some lovely, interesting geometrics in terms of the stripes and.
Well, I think, for so long, people have wanted just a plain cloth, a plain linen, or a plain wool, plain. But I think the world is moving on a tiny bit, or I am in my head anyway. And I think we need a bit more colour. We need a little bit of design, not too much. I find design quite hard. But I think we do need a few different weaves to include into our homes, rather than just plain. So that's how this collection started.
And you're always trying to innovate. So are there any sort of new techniques or from past collections you've carried through to this that are of interest?
Loads. There are loads of new techniques. I mean, just this one that you can see hanging here, that's actually a very old paisley design that we created, and it's been in the archive for 20 odd years, and it was in 12 different colours, and we just took all the colour out, so it almost looks embroidered. So that's one which I'm really in love with. And then some of the stripes in the window, there's so many. But we don't do new collections per se and then get rid of the old collections. Our collections, because they're not fashion-led, they just add to what we already have, and it just becomes a bigger basket of fabrics.
They speak to one another.
Pretty much where
There's definitely a big trend, perhaps, from going away from obvious pattern to I've interviewed quite a number of interior designers in the last few weeks who've all talked about that actually bringing colour and pattern in actually through texture. Yeah. And that's really where you're so good at that, aren't you? Because of the imperfections of the perfections of the way you do things.
With natural fibre, you need to use texture because it's going to give you texture coming from a plant or from an animal, whether you like it or not. So, having those natural textures coming through is what makes it fabulous. Really shows off the fibre.
And Wiggy, you produce a lot of your own fabric.
Yes.
And you quite like a contrast and juxtaposition almost.
Well, everything that Bernie was just saying was exactly how I feel as well. And I use a lot of predominantly only natural fibres. I produce all my own prints, as being one of them. And it looks like an antique piece of cloth. And in fact, a lot of my pieces do come from inspiration from antique, actual remnants that I do find. So 18th century remnants. I work with a couple of dealers. I source these remnants, and there might be a little motif, or there could be a texture or a color palette or something that we start off with.
When fabric starts to wear, it achieves the sort of look that you've got. It achieves almost a patina on the fabric, which is what I think is so charming. When we first started, the only way we could actually achieve that was by stone washing the fabrics. And that means actual stones in the machines with the fabrics to rub on the surface and then to soften the surface. There's some good examples round and about, but I think that's what is charming. Yeah. And then all the fibres come up and you get that lived-in appearance. And ultimately, it gives you that comfort in your home where things are not all so perfect.
It just makes you feel instantly welcome, doesn't it? And Skye, the same as with your very beautiful plates and bowls, etc. You went and found a really old ceramics company, didn't you?
Yeah.
And pulled quite a lot out of their archive.
Yeah, we work with, so there's a little town near Venice called Bassano del Grappa that has a long tradition of kind of making these beautiful ceramics that are kind of 3D. So they have mouldings, designs and mouldings on them, and then they're hand painted typically on top of that.
Grapes and strawberries.
Grapes and strawberries, exactly.
Yes.
They're quite OTT, but I've never been a minimalist, so I think they're very beautiful. And so it's really fun kind of going, and we work with 3 different sort of suppliers, family businesses, and then delving in their archives, and then kind of working. So you take the mold that maybe they haven't used in however long and kind of bring it back, and then work with them on the color or the design that we might paint on it.
Sorry, Bernie, what were you going to say, Dan?
No, I was saying I think it's more relaxing when things are all a bit different and interesting on a table rather than being perfect and pristine, which is the same sort of thing as we try to do with our products.
I think also in the world that we live in now, where more and more things are mass produced or created digitally, that connection with the human touch and humanity is sort of more precious and more valuable. Maybe we value it more because it is rarer. And ultimately, we're all people. Like I always say, food is a people business, because what's interesting to me about a recipe or about food ultimately is it's a way of bringing people together. It's an insight into someone's personal story or their personal world. And so people like people.
Yes.
And finding ways of celebrating that in our kind of interiors and our homes and our way of dressing, I think, is a nice way of connecting and projecting that you want to connect.
And in fact, Benny, you just said whilst we were getting mic'd up, you were just saying, actually, we're on Madonna wannabes, that actually it's getting harder in the face of AI and digitalization and having to be strong enough, like you have always been, to keep pushing the boundaries and keep pushing forward.
You know, when I started, it was all about a pencil and a piece of paper, and that's how we created designs. And then the craftsperson had this incredible skill to understand what you were doing and then produce something beautiful in as much time as they chose. But then the world started to change, and we used computers and everything went digital and online tools, and now we have AI. And what's happened is all these little companies in Europe that I've always dealt with, well, not all, luckily, but a lot have gone into liquidation because they don't have the time. They have to compete. So they're starting to sort of gear up and mass produce, and all these lovely little skills and all these lovely little things they used to be able to do, they can't do anymore. So it's become much harder for us to find these skills craftspeople to still produce what we want.
But it's so important that you are, because you're going to keep whoever's there going.
Absolutely.
And we won't lose it, hopefully. Same with Skye. And then Wiggy, you were telling us you'd found a scrap of material that you loved.
It was amazing. I discovered this incredible vintage jacquard that was from like the 1960s. It had just the most amazing color to it. It's like an ochre sort of yellow that you could only find, you know, from a different sort of era. And I saw this, I thought, oh my God, that is exactly what I want to use for, this was my last collection, exactly what I want. But, you know, how am I ever going to find anything even similar to this? This is really exquisite. It was like an ochre yellow with an amazing metallic thread going through it. It definitely was 100% vintage. And we discovered there was a mill still existing in Lyon, in France. And just thinking, well, what the hell, let's roll the dice, let's go and send it off and see whether they either could come back with something that was similar, or, you know, could they have a stab at doing something similar? This thing came back and it was put on my desk, and I said, so where is the piece of fabric? They said, this is the one that they produced. It was identical.
Amazing.
And I could not believe it. I was so excited. The color, everything was absolutely identical. And they are definitely the last remaining people that can sort of do this. But I think as you grow a business, you have to resist, you know, why you did it in the first place. And, you know, I'm in a bit of a growth stage of my business. And one of the things that I will always hold on to and never relinquish is that the quality, the craftsmanship, using these techniques, which is what people are attracted to in the first place. You must not forget it, because it's very easy when you're trying to expedite things, make your life a lot easier, to not go through the pain that I go through to produce the collections. I mean, other brands, they just don't do this. They just they buy fabric off the shelf, they make it, they're done with it. But we literally agonize over all the fundamental parts that build this,
every pick and every colour.
Everything. And we'll just go over and over again until we get it exactly right. And we won't stop until we get it exactly right. And I'm absolutely determined as I grow my business is even though it's much more labor intensive, it is the reason why people buy it. It's special and it has the artist's hand in it.
You were saying, Bernie, your collections just speak to one another. They keep evolving into one another. They don't become redundant.
No.
Your plates can mix and match. You keep adding new things into the might be a new jug or some glasses, but again, they're never redundant, are they? They're all part of the same spirit. And same
my tagline for my brand is build your kit, because it's all about every season when you buy pieces from my collection. It's not like, once the season's over and you move to the next season, forget about that. That was irrelevant. Now we're looking at something else. It's actually about building season upon season. And if you look at all my collections, what I do is I stay often within the same palette. So you are just building whatever you have before. My pieces will work back to those things in future collections. It's not out with the old, in with the new. It's an evolvement over time. So you're just building this amazing base, this solid collection that things work with each other. I'm constantly delving into my archives, and I'll be wearing things I made 7 years ago with something I've made just yesterday. And I think that's really important, so you don't feel like you're always getting value for money, because it's a continuation of thought. It's not like, I liked that yesterday, but now I don't. It's not about that. Again, no trends.
Sorry, Wiggs.
No, don't worry.
I was just going to say, what are the challenges you've had, because dealing with such craftsmanship in Italy, obviously quite a lot of it, like the glass blowing is definitely dying, isn't it?
Glass blowing is dying.
Have you had those challenges?
Yes. And the painting of the ceramics, like increasingly they find it harder and harder. Like the younger generation don't necessarily want to go into the family business in the same way. So it's quite hard to actually just find the artists to paint the plates, which slows down production time and supply. I mean, the situation in Murano is complicated because there's incredible sort of long history of beautiful glass production. But it is expensive. I mean, for them, a huge issue have been the rising gas prices, because they keep these massive furnaces going 24 hours a day. They shut them off for the month of August. So their cost prices have risen massively. And also the skill. I mean, it takes decades to become a master of glass blower if you can even make it. And I think so. Then you're producing glasses that are very, very expensive. And I think that's where online comes in, because we're primarily an online business. And it's hard to explain to the consumer why one glass that they see a photo of and looks pretty is £100 or £120. Whereas another photo of a glass produced by, I don't know, a mainstream like H&M or IKEA or Zara is maybe £4.50.
And it's
on a screen,
glass,
and it's and on a screen it kind of looks perhaps quite similar. But actually, when you hold it and when you touch it, you appreciate that proper glassware, hand-blown glassware, is like fine silver. These are collector's pieces that you pass down through.
Bernie, how do you think you'll keep your artisans going? As you said, many are closing down. You've always gone and sought out. You just said you've been on a driving trip through Europe, finding little mills.
A lot of the artisans have really struggled as they've been taken over by bigger companies, or other countries like China, for example, and Turkey are starting to mass produce and to bring things in. So they're battling to keep up. But we recently did a little video called True Luxury Takes Time. And it was so interesting because we took a whole crew off to France, and we started with the farmer. So we met the farmer and we saw the dedication, even from the farmer at that stage, in just planting the seeds years, and then pulling the flax plant, which becomes linen, out of the ground. The dedication and the pride in what they're doing was amazing to see. And then we went through the whole system. So we saw all the processes until it got to our warehouse, which was fantastic because everybody along the way really cares. So there are still a lot of people who do really care.
Yes.
It's just not as easy to find them as they used to be.
I think on that note, you've all sat so patiently, or stood, sorry for those standing. Does anyone have any questions for any of the girls? Okay, well, we might give you all a break. The girls will be here, as I said. You can come and ask them questions. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.